Welcome back to another episode of MetaRick, where we speak with builders and entrepreneurs experimenting with XR technologies and artificial intelligence. Today's guest, we have the co-founder and CEO of XpertVR, where he builds immersive virtual reality training tools for first responders, educators, and industrial companies. VR scenarios that strengthen decision-making, leadership, and operational readiness. Over the past 8 years, he's gone from scrappy university experiments and virtual simulations during COVID to working with hundreds of fire departments, colleges, and industrial organizations across North America. In today's episode, we'll go into his backstory of how he got started. We'll talk about the power of storytelling and immersion, how that plays a role in emotional memory when trying to build out these kind of immersive training scenarios. We'll talk about why VR is a no-brainer for firefighter and emergency training, and how their company goes about developing these programs. And we'll also talk a little bit about AI and how they're streamlining both their internal operations and RFP submissions, but also some big picture vision of building more hyper-realistic and bigger experiences powered by AI. Hope you enjoy the story of Evan Sitler-Bates and learn a thing or two that you can bring back to your business.
Away from home, other connection feels so strange. People changing with every phase, holding tight through space and time. Across dimensions, hearts align.
I'm MetaRick!
Evan, thanks for being on the show.
Yeah, Ricky, thanks for having me. I've been a avid listener for a while. I'm a big Rick and Morty fan as well, so I love the intro. And yeah, that's great to be here.
Kept having people tell me that when they heard MetaRick or they saw the logo, they always said the Pickle Rick thing in their head, kind of building in VR. And there's this wide range of use cases that are being experimented with. But the one that seems to have the most traction, the most kind of proven credibility for the real use case for the tech is safety training. Hard skills training, situations that are dangerous, that would be very difficult to replicate. How can we kind of bring people into those environments virtually and be able to coach them up on that? And that seems to be the area you're in. You come across to me more as almost like a training operator that happens to use XR rather than like an XR expert. And I think that is a big distinction that's pretty important. And so I was wondering if you could start by just telling us a little bit about what you actually do at XpertVR and why you started the company.
Yeah, for sure. So at XpertVR, we create virtual reality training for the most part. We're starting to do other XR training as well. And it's focused on firefighting, emergency responders, as well as now fire safety for industrial areas. And basically why we started the company was a love of virtual reality and just excited about the technology. We can dive into it more, but basically saw in university that we're sitting here in class, we're not really learning anything because it's in one ear out the other, watching presentations. And we saw that putting on a VR headset, we were fully engaged. We saw other students fully engaged. And we're like, this is an incredible technology just to excite people. And at the time, we didn't know about the first responder space and how we could influence that space. We just wanted to jump into the technology. And it was through years of just showing the technology to different people and getting their feedback, seeing where they thought the technology could go, that we eventually got into this first responder space and saw the impact that we could have. And now we're kind of full bore in that space because of the impact we are having.
And you've been around this space for a long time. Like you started, I think, 8 years ago. I think you maybe were at one other company before that was also in the VR space. Talk to me about like what you were doing before XR and like what that first experience you had with the technology.
Yeah, so next year will be 10 years officially that I've been in the XR space, starting with the other company I was with before, XpertVR. And before that, I was in university. I was just a second and third year university student, going to classes, really not doing much. And I decided, hey, I want to get more involved in university life. I want to do something while I'm here beyond just go to classes. So I signed up for a bunch of things. And one of the things I signed up for was to join the incubator on campus. And I'd been kind of in the entrepreneurship space a little bit before that because of my parents. And so I was like, yeah, I love business. Let's explore what I could do in the entrepreneurship space. And walking in there, I met my now business partner, Drew McNeil. At the time, I had no idea who he was, but he was the ambassador for the the incubator there. So he gave me a tour of the space, and I had this big idea of drop shipping t-shirts back in 2016. It was pretty popular. And so he gave me this tour of the space. We walked around and we get to the back of the space, and there he has a big t-shirt press and he's making t-shirts. And I was like, he stole my idea. He has the idea. So I was like, all right, what's my second idea? And my second idea was to film 360 videos. I've always been inspired by YouTube and Casey Neistat and Philip DeFranco and different YouTube creators. And so I loved the video creation process, and I think very similarly to a lot of other guests that you've had on, got into the space through those 360 videos. So started filming that, and that's what kind of led into the virtual reality space.
Yeah, that's so common. But both the 360 video is like a first immersive experience, but then also just like having that creative background, like being interested in those YouTubers, those online creators, like that storytelling, I think is so core to where immersive technologies add impact. Because if you're going to create an immersive simulation, a lot of that is storytelling, right? It's like coming up with a scenario and trying to tap into a certain feeling as you're taking someone through a process. If you think about like a business process kind of is a story in itself, right? It's like you've got steps and different characters, different stakeholders involved in each step of the process.
Yeah, and
Um,
it's really like when you're training, what do you remember? And if you're sitting there, you're watching like steps on a slideshow, or even in VR, if you're just going through step by step, you're not necessarily going to remember that. But if you're put into a story where there's people interacting with you and things are happening, and you like in our area, you arrive on scene and you get your initial call out of what you need to do and what your role is on this scene as a firefighter, like you're absorbed into that story, and now that's a memory that you formed for the future. So, yeah, I completely agree.
yeah, so you mentioned finding your co-founder in university, and I think there is something special about having co-founders when you're starting something from nothing. Having that shared accountability, having someone to bounce ideas, different skill sets to contribute. Talk me through a little bit of the founding story of like how you guys actually started the company and what once you actually started, like how'd you get those first customers?
Yeah, no, it's funny that you'd say that, because I was listening to a podcast yesterday from Diary of a CEO, and they actually mentioned that apparently co-founded companies fail more often than non-co-founded companies. So it was interesting to hear that stat, because I completely agree. Having somebody to bounce ideas off of and work with is super important, or has been for me. Um, but yeah, to zoom back out, the founder story, how we kind of got started. We met in university. I had a 360 video camera. I was kind of just filming stuff for the university for fun, for a couple like friends and little companies that were around. I did some like film premieres and stuff. And in doing so, I was like, "Okay, this would be really cool if I could put this in a VR headset and not just watch on a phone." But back then, 2016, it was like 1,500 Canadian plus for a VR headset, and then you needed like a $4,000 plus computer to run it. So I was like, I don't have the money for this as a broke university student, but I have some money. Let's go convince Drew, the incubator ambassador and my now business partner, to purchase this with me. So we had kind of become friends at the point, and I was like, hey, like let's buy this together. Let's buy this headset. And we got together, we bought the headset, we set it up, we spent hours on the phone with HTC support trying to get everything working. And that kind of like bonded us around virtual reality and the excitement of the technology, both from enjoying it as well as the struggles of going through it. Um, and from there, we just kind of showed it to everybody. We always just set it up in the hallway so that other students could come by and try VR for free. We had professors coming by. We had people that were visiting the university on business coming by, and just kind of seeing like what excited them, what they liked about the technology. And that led to us first doing all kinds of setups. So we would go to weddings, birthday parties, all kinds of events. We had people from the ages of 5 to 95 go into the headsets. We even rented out a U-Haul once and had it set up with like kids funneling into the back of this U-Haul, because we needed light protection for the lighthouses on the headset. So we did all kinds of like crazy setups like that. And that kind of led us into meeting a bunch of professors that loved how this could be used for research purposes. So we did research around the future of ocean life and how seeing it in virtual reality may impact your decision making on policies around like ocean life, and how to protect it through the UN or through the government, as well as doing like consumer behavior research and things along those lines. And going through that, it was building up really well into 2019, 2020. We were very excited. And then, as we all know, COVID hit. And that's when we kind of had to fully pivot and we didn't really know what to do. But all of those professors that we were working with were connected with colleges and others that needed training because they couldn't do co-op in person anymore. So they started reaching out, and that's what led us into the training space of, all right, COVID's happened. We need a way to train remotely.
So that first era, this era of kind of creating 360 content, kind of demoing it to everyone, like this really wide range, like you had this interesting technology, you knew that it was engaging, but you're just experimenting with a ton of different use cases, right? Is that was that business model, was it even a business model? Was it just kind of student projects? Was it something that was like a service where you'd create the content and charge for the content production? Or like what was the stage of business at before you got to the trainings during COVID?
Yeah, I don't know if we really had a business model, quote unquote, around it. But like we did have pricing, or we would price things on a custom basis. And yeah, basically it was Brock University, the university we went to, or Niagara Falls Tourism, 'cause we're based in Niagara Falls area. They came to us and they're like, hey, we want to shoot these 360 videos. How much would it cost? And then we put together a quote for it. So we did a bunch of those, kind of in the $5,000 to $10,000 range type of contracts. And then yeah, we were doing a bunch of setups where I think we charged like $100 an hour or something to like go to a birthday party or go to some sort of event, and we'd bring all the equipment and we would be there to put people through the different simulations that were available. But
Yeah,
it wasn't super structured.
don't discount yourself. That's a business, right? Like maybe it's not like a standardized, repeatable, like scalable business, but that's a business, right?
Yeah.
Like that's you're going out, you're charging, you're doing projects. Like it's kind of almost like a service based, like small agency type of a model. So COVID hits, you have this network because you've been sharing all these demos and you've been doing these projects, and so the universities, it sounds like they came to you with a need. Does it start with that safety training element with like firefighters and public safety, or where did that training kind of take you at first?
Yeah, so at first it was actually around policing. I'm originally from Kitchener-Waterloo. It's not too far from Niagara Falls, about an hour and a half, where we were based. And so we got a lot of outreach from Conestoga College and some other colleges. And Conestoga is based in Kitchener-Waterloo. So I think through the connections we had, as well as just a good website SEO that we had at the time, they found us, saw that we were an Ontario-based company, and reached out. And yeah, their biggest concern at the time, or the starting concern where they could see VR helping, was for their policing students. And basically, normally they would go out on co-ops, or they would have in-person events where they would create a fake or mock crime scene. And they were like, we can't do that right now. How can we create a crime scene in VR? And we're like, well, that's simple. We can build out this environment. We can create all these stories of what happened, whether it was an assault or a murder or a robbery, and we can build this whole story around it. And then we can place all of the objects and characters and everything so that you can go in and you can investigate. And so we built that in the summer of 2020 and released it, I think, that September, if not January, into that semester of policing students. And everyone loved it. They were on it in VR whenever they get a VR headset. We also built a version that could go into their learning management system, so they go online, and students were playing with it all the time, and they were learning a lot, so that when they went to the test, they were acing all the tests that they had to do.
That's so cool. I mean, it sounds like kind of the perfect use case and a great bridge to get you into the things that you're working on now. Um, the with the police training, how similar was that to the firefighting training? Like, did you was that like a very strong foundation that took you in that direction, or kind of what was the step from policing to getting into fire safety?
Yeah, I think the way we think about it and build out the stories is completely different, but the foundation is definitely the same. So I always say at XpertVR, we're building environments, objects to go in those environments, and tools to use, and then we build a story around that. So with policing, we built out a house or a diner, and then we have to put in like murder objects in there, and possibly like a dead avatar, or just like outlines of a body, or missing things that looks like a safe's been broken into if there was a robbery, those sorts of things. And then we have our tools of like dusting for fingerprints, taking photos, putting up police tape, etc. So that foundation really led us to building out that structure of, okay, we can build out an environment and we can use it for policing, but then we can copy and paste that environment and use it for other areas like now firefighting. Similarly, some of the objects in there, like we built out simulations for culinary students. So, okay, we have knives in this diner that are used for murder knives, but they can now also be used in the cooking space. And then the tools, those are pretty like set to the area that you're teaching, but having that framework built out allowed us to then kind of copy and paste and build out other things. So yeah, we're able to use that framework for firefighting, except now we're teaching them all kinds of new tools. And obviously there's all kinds of different tactics that they're using when it comes to firefighting versus crime scene investigation.
And for the application itself, did you host this on any sort of other platform, or was this like a fully custom built app, as like this specific policing university has their own app for this simulation, and then same thing for like the culinary school? Like you're not building like a platform, right? At this point, it's like individual experiences for each course.
Yeah, all individual. The only thing that we did do, like I mentioned, is we would build the headset version for a lot of these, and Crime Scene is a great example. But then we would also build the LMS version so that it could go into their learning management system, and they log in, they see, oh, I have a project they have to do or a test that I have to do, and when they open it up, it's a full virtual experience that they use their mouse and keyboard to move through. But yeah, it's a fully custom app that they're using.
Nice. Okay, that makes a lot of sense. I feel like having where do you think the XR part is the most vital versus the LMS portion? Because like there's two very different experiences, right? When you go into headset with that full immersion versus not, the trade-off is usually that like a non-headset experience is going to be more accessible and more scalable. The headset experience will be more engaging and kind of take the training to the next level. What do you think from the university perspective? Like, where was it worth the jump to go through the friction of getting people in headset?
Yeah, no, you're definitely right there. The accessibility side of things is the most important piece of the LMS side, especially over COVID. I think where VR really benefits or has been benefiting for us, especially in the firefighter training, is for the multi-user side and the actual physical actions that you do. So we don't necessarily have like firefighters swinging axes and doing things where you would have to have physical feedback, but we do have them crawling on their hands and knees. We do have them moving the nozzle properly. So those sorts of things where you want to learn how to handle a tool properly or to know what positions you need to be in to see under smoke and those sorts of things, you can't really replicate in an LMS space. Like obviously you can have a button to make you crouch and you can do certain things, but actually physically being in there and feeling it is a huge piece. I think as well, I always talk about the PwC study, which I think a lot of people do, looking at how people were up to 3.75 times more emotionally connected to VR content versus classroom content. And I know there's a lot of debates around those stats, but we found with our firefighting students, like we had a firefighter, a pre-service firefighter, go into a house, went down into the basement, and there was four people that they needed to rescue in this basement. And yes, in seeing them, they got lost. They forgot they were in the basement, thought they were in the garage, started searching for the door to get out of the garage, and instead should have been looking for the stairs to get out of the basement. And going through that motion, they ran out of air. They weren't able to rescue the patients. They became a patient themselves. Other firefighters were able to come in, rescue those four people, and rescue them, and they got out. And I think on an LMS, like you'd kind of not get as disorientated because you're not fully immersed in that world. Whereas in virtual reality, it's like the smoke is everywhere. There's people screaming in front of me. Like I can see that my air is running out. Like you get into this panic because you're fully in that world. And then you can take off the headset and debrief and move on.
And so with training like this, right? It's a change in process where I think of it as a spectrum. Where on one side of the spectrum, you've got like a traditional LMS, like maybe slide decks, videos, kind of 2D content, maybe best case like some 3D content through a screen. But then on the right side of the spectrum, you have in-person simulation where you like kind of almost build out like a constructed set of the layout and play through the roles and kind of try and simulate it as best you can in real life. With things like firefighting, and I imagine the in-person part is like a little challenging too, right? Because like making like an actual burning building or smoke and some of those things might actually be easier to simulate in a virtual room than it is to simulate even in person in a physical room. But I know with other industries, like let's say you're learning how to use like a medical device. I had Alan Smithson on the show a while back
Mm.
talking about Siemens with this medical equipment where someone still has to physically train with that equipment at some point. But if they can reduce it to 2 days of physical training with the equipment and then do 90% of the training virtually, they're saving a ton of money. They're speeding up the training. Like they have limited devices that are really expensive to transport and move around. So even if they can just shorten the physical training to a couple days, it's a huge value add for Siemens. And so I wonder in the firefighting context, what does that pipeline look like? Like what percentage of the training can be done in VR? And is there still some components that you need to physically train and kind of do like what's the separation between virtual training versus in-person training?
Yeah, so what we're seeing right now, especially in schools, but also just in general firefighter training, is you still need some of that classroom training. If you haven't been a firefighter at all, you don't know anything, like you need to sit down and a teacher needs to tell you like this is what smoke patterns look like. Here's the types of tools that you're going to be using. Here's what you're going to be doing in your role. They need to tell you those things before you just jump right into a scenario. I guess I can picture a world where maybe in the future, and we are working on this to a certain degree, I can see you having like a presentation in VR, and then it's like literally, it's like, here's what smoke patterns look like in a picture. Now look over in this virtual world. Let's enter this house. Let's see that. Now let's come back to the presentation, and we can kind of like go back and forth like that. But you still need that kind of presentation piece, that teaching piece. And then what we're seeing is the virtual reality is for practicing. So now that you know what you need to do, you can go in there and actually practice that, get those sets and reps, know how to do a 360 of a house if you're trying to be an incident command officer, so you can know what to identify, know how to look for smoke patterns and actually apply what to do when you see different smoke patterns. So there's that practice piece. And then, like you said, with Alan Smithson and Siemens, like you do still kind of need that hands-on piece. You need to feel the heat. You need to really feel how much you're going to use up your air when you're running up and down stairs. And there are ways to simulate that technically, and there is like some companies that do it, but we found it's really complex and it just adds a lot of extra cost and a lot of extra setup that really firefighters don't need. So basically what we found is, yeah, you have that classroom, you have at least 3 sessions in VR of like an hour each where you can really practice and get those sets and reps. And then you go to a live burn where they do set a house on fire, or they have concrete buildings that they burn pallets in, and you can go in and you can apply what you learned. And what we found is going into that real life training, you can get to the more advanced side of the live burn that normally you're not able to get to because it's your first time in that environment.
Yeah, and I imagine there's only so many times you can do a live burn. And so if you can get infinite reps virtually, technically infinite, I mean, not infinite, but you can get significantly more reps virtually versus what you can get with a live burn, it gives people just a chance to be far more prepared.
Exactly. And like when you say that, it always like brings up in my mind going to San Diego Fire, who we train with, or going to New York Fire, who we're hoping to work with in the future, but we've gone and seen their facilities where they train. And both of them, like they're big cities, they have these incredible facilities, multi-million dollar facilities where they have buildings, they have planes, they have different types of cars, like subway systems, everything that they can train on. And it's incredible. And it's like, if a firefighter can train on that every day or even every month, like you don't need VR. You really don't. But like they have people there training every day, but the number of firefighters they have and the throughput and the cost of these burns, a firefighter gets to go there. If you're a New York firefighter, you get to go there maybe once a year, if not like once every 2, 3 years. And it's like, if you don't see a fire for a year because like firefighting is mostly medical calls and other things, like now you show up a year after not practicing or having any sets and reps, and you're expected to fight that fire and know everything that you have to do. VR is the fix for that.
That's a great point. It makes me think of Devin Marble from VR Patients was telling me some surprising stats on how few simulations nursing students go through and real nurses go through to prepare. And if there's certain edge cases that like you don't see that often, like you mentioned, but like I think 80 to 90% of calls for firefighters are medical calls. Like you want to make sure that muscle is still ready because a fire could happen at any moment. It's not something that you're going to predict. I am
And
curious because sorry if you have another thought on that.
yeah, sorry, just one other thought there. Like the unpredictable piece is really important too. Like right now, and we can dive into it more. Right now, we're working on lithium ion training with Ontario, the province here in Canada, as well as we're working on hazmat scenarios. And we've done a bunch of hazmat scenarios in the past with different colleges. And it's like, if you think it's surprising that a firefighter gets live training every 1 to 3 years, like you wouldn't imagine how little they get to train on hazardous materials or what that training looks like. Like from a lot of firefighters we talk to, you go up out back behind the fire station, they put a propane tank beside a dumpster, and they're like, pretend that propane tank's on fire, or pretend it's chlorine gas that's coming out of it. What do you do? And it's like that's their training, and it's like these are the people that we're expecting to save our lives and to be the heroes of our society, and that's the training we're giving them. Like we need to give them much better training to be prepared for those unpredictable scenarios.
So I'm glad the that's where you went because my next question was kind of around this idea of standardization versus variability because I think I read somewhere it was like 437 different departments you guys have worked with or something like that. It's like a lot of different departments in different regions. Fire seems like the big one, but like some other public safety as well. Um, is that very standardized? Like, can you provide the same kind of training, or does each region have their own processes, their own regulations, their own risk factors? Like California's got wildfires. That's probably not as big a deal in the Northeast. Like how do you think about standardization versus variability for each of these different departments?
Yeah, I will say it depends where you go. Like Ontario is starting to get a lot more standardized, or they're trying to, and definitely across Canada, across the states, certain areas, there are governing bodies that are trying to make the standards more standardized. The issue is, especially in firefighting, like a lot of these departments are volunteer based or like mostly volunteer based. So like these are people that they want to be there, they want to help protect you, but they have a full-time job, and so they're on call and they can't necessarily be coming in and learning the new standards that are coming out weekly or monthly or yearly, um, especially if those aren't mandatory. So what we kind of find is like every fire department, number one, they're going to have their own standards and procedures. Hopefully they're kind of referencing the like greater organizations that are out there and what standards they've set. But then, like you said, yeah, number two, whether you're going to California or BC and there's a lot of wildfires, you're in a big city like Toronto where there's possibly a lot more lithium ion fires from e-scooters and e-bikes, or you're going into like a rural town in Ontario where they just don't have the same high rises in different types of buildings that might be in some of our other scenarios or in some of the other fire departments area. So what we've kind of found is like we're not necessarily teaching the standards and the procedures that you have to go through. We're giving them what are all the tools that you might have access to, what are all the scenarios that you might face, and then we put you into those scenarios and you can practice your own procedures and strategies and what you do in those environments so that you're prepared for how you would actually handle it in the real world.
That's interesting. So it kind of goes back to some of the foundations you learned in the police training, where it's like you're building the environments, you're setting up the different scenarios that they might be facing, but the actual procedure, like the step by step, that's a little more flexible. Like you're not hard coding all of that into the experience. That's something that's going to be a little bit case by case. Is that something where you've built the technology in a way where it's so flexible that the fire departments themselves come in and just kind of do their own process, or are you doing kind of custom deployments for each one, kind of based on the procedures they share with you?
No, yeah, we've made it very flexible. So basically, we have two parts to our simulations, or three parts, I guess. We have our authoring tool, instructor tools, and the actual simulation. So the authoring tool is for an instructor before a scenario starts. They can pick one of our environments, and we have pre-made scenarios, but they can pick one of our environments. They can pick objects that they want to put into those environments, and then they can say like, what tools do you have access to? How much water do you have access to? Those sorts of things. So they can create it so it's a scenario that they might actually face in their city or town, and they actually have the resources they would normally have access to, whether that's unlimited water or limited water because they don't have fire hydrants, those sorts of things. Um, and then in the actual scenario, they have instructor tools to be able to watch people, but they can also trigger events. So if somebody's like flying through and they're doing really well on the objectives they wanted to track. They can have part of the ceiling cave in, or they can have a kink happen in their hose, so now they have to deal with that problem, and because they don't have water pressure, all those sorts of things. And then we have the simulation, and the actual simulation that the firefighters are in, we like to call it a sandbox, just like sandbox games, for those familiar, where basically you go in, you're in this scenario, in this story that's evolving as you're in there because the fire's growing, people are screaming, people are moving, etc. But other than the fire growing like it normally would, following real world physics, like it's all up to you of what you do. Are you going to go fight that fire? Do you call for backup? Like what procedure do you follow? So yeah, it's very flexible to what they need.
I love this use case. It seems like so painfully clear to me. I mean, I'm not a firefighter. I'm not in the intricacies of it, so I'm sure that there's more nuance than what I can see. But from an outside perspective, it just seems like it's so valuable and kind of straightforward that you would want to do something like this. What are some of the objections that you face, or reasons why a department might not incorporate VR training into their process?
Yeah, like I think the main two, number one that's probably going to come up with any product is price. So obviously there's a lot of conversations we have about the value this brings and the things that it can replace versus what it can't replace. So we talk a lot about that, and that's always something that comes up, especially for small departments. Like it might be a volunteer department and they only have a little bit of funding from their council, and they're like, if we want to buy this, we have to go to our council and convince them on it. So we have a lot of conversations around, number one, how can we help you convince your council and show that value? But then also number two, like we're trying to work with the big fire departments. We're trying to work with the Office of the Fire Marshal. We're trying to work with industry now as well. So when there's a small volunteer department and we hear like, hey, we can't pay for this, we sit down and we're like, well, what can you pay for? Like let's figure out a way that we can benefit here from some PR and stuff along those lines and give it to you at a massive discount so that you can have access to it. So those types of pricing conversations are always coming up. I think the biggest other area is just like, this is new technology. It can't replace our live burns, or like it's new technology and our firefighters can't understand how to use it because they're in their 50s and 60s and maybe 70s kind of thing. And so we normally sit down, we're like, well, let's get your guys inside of here. Let's get their opinion on it. And really, it hasn't failed yet. We show up to a fire department, we get 4+ people into the simulation, and they're running around, and after 5 minutes they've picked up all the controls because we really limit the buttons they're using on the controllers, and they're loving it, and they're like, yeah, this is like a live burn, except I'm not outside in the winter faking a live burn. I'm actually inside of an environment that is realistic, and I'm actually able to use my tools, and I can actually run water because it's not freezing outside, etc. And they love it, and it kind of disproves that theory or that thought.
Yeah, it's such a tricky thing. I think most XR companies in general, one of the things they struggle with is how to tell the story outside of XR. Like if someone's not in the headset experiencing it, it's really difficult to tell the same story. Like I think about this at Arthur pretty frequently, where it's like when people are in Arthur and like it's this corporate virtual office environment, when you're in it, it's so immersive and it feels like you're standing in the same room with your team, and all these collaboration tools are very useful, and you've got like AI coworkers standing next to you talking to you and participating in the meeting. Like it's very, very immersive, and the value's felt pretty consistently. But when you send someone a screenshot of that same thing, it just doesn't quite hit the same, right? Like it just doesn't feel the same way it's going to feel when you're inside of it versus looking into it. So it sounds like the way you overcome that is you just get there in person, you bring the devices, you just try and get people to experience it for themselves. Or is there
Yeah,
another way you found to tell the story outside of headset?
that's definitely the main way. But yeah, now that you say it, like the other way that we definitely do use is like client recommendations and referrals, and just like getting quotes from people. Like we just got a quote that's new and up on our new website from San Diego Fire, and just saying, now I can't remember the quote exactly off the top of my head, but basically saying like, saying this is amazing isn't saying enough. It's something along those lines. Um, and so like getting that sort of feedback from a captain at San Diego Fire that has been training with us for a year and a half now, using it for his training, and 2-3 months ago ran over 400 firefighters through the training. Like that's incredible feedback that now I can sit down with another fire department and be like, hey, San Diego's using it. This is what they're saying. This is how many firefighters they put through this. They're using it on a monthly basis. They're buying more headsets so they can use it more often. And having that kind of proof in the pudding really helps convince people too, because they're like, okay, San Diego's a leader in this space and we can call them up and we can hear what they're saying from them as well.
I just pulled it up just because I'm based in San Diego. I have like a vested interest in shouting them out a little bit. So the San Diego fire captain said to say beyond impressed would not be saying enough. And that's alongside a couple other quotes from a pre-service fire instructor at Conestoga College saying in 13 years of teaching, this was the best student performance I've seen. No one can top you guys in VR training realism. And another one that says in the fire service, evolution is inevitable. Training too must adapt to meet these ever-changing needs. Products like XpertVR foster this necessary transformation from the Corona Fire chief. So some really good testimonials there. That's awesome to see. And I think that's something we find too at every XR product I've worked with. Like if you can show it's being used by real people and they have good things to say about it, that definitely goes a long way. Where do most of your customers come from today? Like referrals is one channel that seems like it would be a good one. But there's other ways of cold email, cold calling, going to in-person events and trade shows, and each of them, all these strategies have pros and cons. Like what have you experimented with? What do you see works for you in kind of generating new business?
Yeah, I think we've experimented with basically everything at this point. Maybe certain areas we should dive deeper into in the future as we continue to experiment. But the three that we've kind of found successful so far is number one, going to events like you mentioned. That's always a good first touch point for people that maybe have seen us on LinkedIn or online somewhere, but don't really know much about VR. Like I was saying, that allows us to get them into the headset to experience something, at least to a certain degree. We like to set up in like a bigger space so we can have multiple people in there together and do like a full training rotation so they get the full experience. But sometimes it just means putting on a headset quickly in a standalone space. So that definitely makes a big impact. Secondly, I guess most scalable area is cold outreach on LinkedIn. We've just found going through LinkedIn, finding fire chiefs, training officers, other leaders in the fire space is a great way just to get connected, start a conversation. At the very least, like say, hey, are you going to be at this big conference that's coming up in 2-3 months? Like if you're there, we'd love to have you stop by and kind of prove you wrong on some of the thoughts that you might have about virtual reality. So that's the second area. And then the third area is RFPs. So like we work in the government space, so requests for proposals are always going out online, and a lot of the time they're not going to mention virtual reality. So for us, like for firefighting, it might say we need a propane prop to show X, Y, or Z type of fire in a car or in whatever. Can you create that? And so we'll be reaching out and say like, hey, I know you're looking for this prop and you're looking for a budget of X hundreds of thousands, millions of dollars for this. We could do this at a lot lower cost, at a much more scalable way. You can send it out to more people. Would you be interested in an application if it talked about virtual reality? And I would say it's kind of 50-50. Sometimes they're like, no, we know what we want and we don't want to talk about anything else. Other times they're like, yeah, let's see a proposal there. And like that's how we're working with the Ontario government now. They were originally looking for propane props for lithium ion fires. And we reached out and we're like, here's VR, like here's what we have so far. We'd love to build something for you. And now it led to us working through them with them. And that's just watching RFP websites.
Yeah, that's it. The RFP stuff is challenging. Sometimes it's like so much work to submit for an RFP that like you have a low shot.
Oh yeah.
But in your industry, there is something interesting where it's like areas of priority or potentially even hard requirements for the types of training that firefighters need to do. If your technology can align with those new requirements, like it's a really easy bridge to say this is a need to have, not a nice to have for you. And it's something you're already investing in or focused on. So it makes sense. Like I see like there's definitely an opportunity there. For RFPs, do you have a way of monitoring that, or are you just manually kind of searching it, or do you have a tool or something, or how do you know when the right RFP pops up as something that fits what you guys do?
Yeah, just a bunch of different websites. Me and others on our team have signed up for just to get notifications for anything that's virtual reality, firefighter training, firefighters in general, fire service, fire safety, all those kind of keywords. We just get notifications on. So definitely on all the provincial sites. So there's like for Ontario here in Canada, or Alberta, or for California in the States, like looking at state level sites, they all have their own. So setting up notifications and profiles there is super important because you're going to need to go there eventually if there's an RFP. But then as well, there's a couple paid websites that we go to where we pay like a monthly or yearly membership, and they're always kind of scouring all the RFP websites that are out there, and municipal and non-municipal ones, giving us some insights into what's out there.
That's pretty cool. I don't hear enough people talking about that because there's a lot of people that work with universities and with government where something like that would be really valuable. And I always hear people talk a lot about cold outbound tech stack of like how you source emails and phone numbers and like how you can do outreach at scale or power dialing and like all these different things. But when it comes to like vetting RFPs or creating automations around finding which of these RFPs is going to be worth investing the time into to submit for, that's pretty cool that you guys have found a process around that and kind of have that dialed down.
Yeah, and I know you wanted to talk about like AI later in the podcast, but I
Mm-hmm.
will say like from there, like we've won quite a few RFPs at this point, or as well as different like grants that are out there. So we've been able to train ChatGPT on all of the documents that we've written in the past. And now it is a pretty simple process. Like you said, it is still grueling on the timeline. Like for this Ontario contract, it took us almost 2 years to get it. So like it can take a long time. But with ChatGPT, we're able to go in and be like, all right, here's the project, here's our thoughts, write us the first draft, and then we can go through and edit that a couple times, share it with some of our subject matter experts, get them to edit it. And then we have a really nice template of our presentation to kind of summarize everything. And so we can kind of go through that ChatGPT RFP and say, all right, like, our template for our presentation, like spit out some points that we should have on there. So it does speed up the process using AI in that way as well.
I love that as a use case for AI. I just got back from an innovation event with a lot of innovation leaders for different companies, and we were talking about where AI adds value, where it doesn't, where we should be focusing. And there was a common pattern I kept hearing about where it's like if you have really well established playbooks, AI is fantastic for scaling that playbook,
Yeah.
and really making it work. But the simple phrase is shit in, shit out, right? Like if you don't have a very good playbook, AI will just scale a bad playbook, and it's not going to really work. But if you have a process around these RFPs where like what type of information they're usually going to ask you for, and like you have submitted them manually a lot of times, and you have a sense for how to go about it, then you can train your AI to be able to, at the bare minimum, be able to draft that for you and make that so much easier because you have something that's a bit repeatable. Now that AI can be useful to you and kind of be a big time saver, a big value add. So I love that as a use case.
Yeah, no,
Um,
you're exactly right. Yeah.
I was going to ask you also about the event side of what you do. So
Mm.
events are great, and I agree. I think with VR, like getting people in the headset, it's a great opportunity. You said something interesting where in a lot of your cold outreach, instead of trying to like ship them a headset or fly out there, like you'll just be like, "I'm going to be here. Are you going to be there too?" And you try that as one approach to just catch as many people as possible during those touch points. Is there anything else you do in preparation for an event to try and make sure that you get the most out of that experience?
Yeah, I think just making sure that our booth is attractive. Like you show up at any trade show or event, everyone has a table, maybe a TV and two chairs behind it kind of thing. So we I don't know, we've tried a lot of things. To be honest, don't know which ones work and which ones don't for sure.
I'm
Um,
sure I'm sure you didn't do this, but I'm just picturing a booth that's on fire.
Now that you say that, like we do have a mixed reality app that we've been working with from the Netherlands where you can like set stuff on fire and use a fire extinguisher. And like next time we go to a conference, I'm going to film, the booth on fire and be like, hey, it's on fire. All firefighters come and help. I love that.
That's
Not
very
actually on
cool.
fire, just for any event organizers listening. But
Yeah, give people a chance to put the booth out or something.
yeah,
That's a cool
exactly.
idea. I like that.
Love it. But yeah, no, like, FDIC is the biggest firefighting event that happens in the world. It's in Indianapolis. So we've gone once. We're going again next year. So with that, like the first time that we went, we tried a bunch of things. And again, I don't know exactly which ones worked, but we all had these like custom made flannels where we had XpertVR across these red flannels. And so we're a Canadian company, walking the floor. I think it helped like represent, oh, these are some Canadians down here. Maybe they have better pricing because they're Canadian. Also, just like they're cool looking with these flannels on. Let's go talk to them. So that I think helped. Number two, like we did have on some gray area here because I don't think you're supposed to necessarily like advertise in the show, but like we had like a backpack where we had a stick coming out the back and we had a big sign saying like VR demos over in this room. And we had a couple of our employees like walk the floor a few times, just like doing that. I think one time one of our employees even walked around with a VR headset on with pass through on. So just like kind of attracting people of like what's going on there. And then I think the biggest area that we're trying to improve and find like the best way to utilize it, if I'm being honest. But we built out a virtual reality bus a couple of years ago, or no, yeah, 2 years ago now, where basically it's a VR demo space. It has advertising for Expert VR all over the outside. It also has a bed and a little kitchen and everything for anybody that's traveling in it, usually me. So with that, like we've been driving that down to events where we can kind of park it outside of the event. Now we're looking at like with some of the bigger spaces we have, could we bring that into the event space so when people are walking by, it's not just like an empty space with a bunch of VR headsets? Like, what is this huge bus? And then with the fire extinguisher, we could have like fires inside the bus that you're fighting. So yeah, just trying kind of different wacky ideas that set you apart from the other people that are just sitting there at the table looking bored and waiting for you to come over and say hi.
That is such a cool idea. It's with good marketing, there's so many things that are like stuff that you don't think will scale or might not have like a perfect ROI for, but I think genuinely do make a difference just from being creative. Like when you said the flannels thing, I was thinking about AES in Dallas. It's a big XR conference
Mm.
for more enterprise like businesses. But there's a company called Squint that does AR for manufacturing mostly, and all of them were wearing like safety manufacturing vests and this bright highlighter yellow with the Squint logo on it. And it just stood out. Anytime any of these people are walking around the event, like you kind of saw five of them together at the booth, and now you see them walk around. You're like, oh, that's right. I haven't been to that booth yet. And it kind of locks in the brand with all these people everywhere. It's something different.
Exactly.
So I like that. With the bus, how'd you come up with that? That's such a unique idea. Where'd that come from?
Where did that come from exactly? Like, I think I saw a few YouTubers going back to my YouTube roots and being creative there that had created different types of buses. I definitely had been following just some people that were making buses for travel. Also, my mom and stepdad, they travel all over North America in an RV. They're retired now, so that's what they do. So they kind of inspire me on the travel side. So yeah, I think I was kind of just sitting there. I'm like, I would love to travel. Like we're all working remotely, but I was like, I want to do something that's going to help build Expert VR as well. So I was like, well, if I built out this bus that had like a Murphy bed in it, there would be enough room to do a VR demo in the back. And we could have advertising all outside of it. We're going to a bunch of conferences. And the ultimate goal, like it was kind of put on pause because we got this large contract and we've been working on some things, but the ultimate goal is to do a cross North America tour where I like drive across Canada and go down in the States and do some sort of big loop and like set up demos with fire departments all along the way. So we've done a few of those like smaller tours and it's worked really well. And yeah, I think the idea just came from my parents, YouTube videos, and being like, how can I integrate this with Expert VR?
I love that. No, there's something to this inspiration from B2C to B2B. I was talking to my buddy Nate Essen, who started a newsletter and like getting into B2B content. And a big thing we talked about was like most B2B content kind of lags behind B2C content. And so if you look at what was working for consumer focused creators and influencers maybe 10 years ago, a lot of that will work really well for business today. So examples of that I've seen are like the content house. Like
Mm.
that was a big thing for influencers in like 2015. You'd get a bunch of influencers in one big mansion or an Airbnb, and they'd take a bunch of content together or like host these influencer meetups and kind of combine all these different people's followings and their creativity. And now I've seen a few examples where people are doing that in the business world,
Interesting.
more with like tech startups and earlier stage companies. But it's stuff like that I think is going to keep happening more and more in the B2B world. You mentioned AI a second ago. I want to double click on that with a few minutes here. Like, how are you guys using AI outside of RFPs? Anything else you're doing either internally with your processes or in the product as a like AI feature or value add there?
Yeah, so almost all of it is right now internally, but we are looking towards the product side. So internally right now, our development team is using multiple different AIs every day, ranging from GitHub Copilot, CoPlay, if you're familiar with them, as well as ChatGPT. And then I think Unity has another plugin that they're using on top of CoPlay. But yeah, just testing out different tools. It's not a silver bullet. It's not going to solve all the problems, but they found and we found that when you're running into an issue, if you can go to somebody and bounce an idea off of them without like taking away from another task that one of our other developers is working on, you have this AI that can give you some feedback and hopefully get you over that hump a lot faster and possibly kind of brainstorm a new idea and get you past that like starting phase. So that's been working really well internally there on the marketing, sales, administration side of things, which I mainly focus on now. Yeah, I'm using it for the RFPs, like I mentioned, but as well in the marketing space. I've had quite a few like LinkedIn posts that kind of popped off. I kind of know what kind of LinkedIn posts I want to create. LinkedIn has changed a lot over the past year, so I am re-navigating it at the moment. But going into ChatGPT and being like, all right, here's my idea, and normally I'll have like a couple paragraphs of like what I'm looking to post, but it's not at all polished or it's just like a bunch of ramblings, and then it will make it into a clean post, and then I can go and edit it and post that online and usually have some content that I created with that. Um, Beyond that, looking at the actual development, the only area that we're currently using AI in the actual simulations is for the voices. So for lots of the characters that we have, we just use 11 labs to create the voices for the characters. That's all like pre-scripted voices and conversations. In the future, we have been doing some tests of how can we bring in AI to have full conversations. So we would love to be able to have, um, well, a couple different ideas. We'd love to have incident command training. So basically, you're looking at a wildfire in California, and you have to sit down. And you see this wildfire spreading on a virtual map in front of you, and maybe you have some other stakeholders, like real stakeholders in the room with you to make decisions, but then you could have an AI like policy guy. And he's like, all right, like, what is our policy if the fire reaches this area, or we need to order 1,000 cots to set up like a refuge space? Like, where can we order those from? What kind of suppliers do we have? And like California could feed all of that information into an AI, and then it's an AI that you can train with and be prepared for these emergencies with. As well, just like if there's victims and patients at a scene that you have to have a conversation with. So that's the main like uh, sooner or short term areas we're looking at. Kind of longer term or areas that we're trying to figure out is for our actual fire. So currently we have a fire system that like spreads throughout a building pretty well and very realistically. But when we look at a forest fire or when we look at much bigger buildings, that fire system is pretty compute heavy. So we're looking at like how could we have an AI that like knows how a fire spreads in a forest or in a building with real world physics, and possibly uses less compute than our current system, so that we can realistically show those sorts of things.
That's so cool. I love the full gamut. And I like that you're not rushing, like forcing your company to become an AI company. You're thinking of ways to be more effective with AI first, and then layering in like what are the thoughtful ways that AI can make our existing offering better instead of trying to just do like a full company pivot. I always
Yeah.
respect that a lot. Because it does sound like there's ways AI could make your product offering a lot better, and you've kind of thoughtfully listed out a few of them there. The stakeholders and personas one is pretty interesting. Like this is coming up a lot, is this idea of almost digital twinning personas within a company. So you don't always have to take away other people's time to interact with them, or you can place them in training situations. Where do you see Expert VR going from here? So it seems like you've found like a really strong niche in the fire space, probably have some room to keep growing. is the next step to expand outside of fire into more use cases and keep rinse and repeating? Is it to layer deeper into fire and kind of get into like other use cases like soft skills, like you mentioned, with like maybe an AI empathy training exercise, or getting into like those non-fire related calls that firefighters deal with? Or where do you see kind of that next step for XpertVR?
Yeah, it's kind of two paths, two parallel paths that we're on right now. So it's definitely getting deeper into the firefighting space. Right now, like we've mentioned, we're bringing in lithium-ion devices with the Ontario government. So that's a whole unique side of firefighting that we're bringing in. The soft skills is an area that we want to look at. Aviation fires is an area that we're currently getting ready to develop in, and how different airport fires happen and the tools that they use there. So there's a wide range of firefighting that we definitely want to continue evolving. But then secondarily, I think right now our main focus beyond firefighting is industrial fires. So most large manufacturing plants, they have fire safety teams or just safety teams in general. And we want to train them on those types of emergencies when it comes to fire. Lithium is becoming big in factories and manufacturing spaces, as well as other emergencies. If there's different gas leaks, or there's um, a machine that breaks down and somebody is hurt there, like how do you respond to those sorts of emergencies? Um, so those are kind of the two parallel paths that we're looking at, and where we think that they'll meet in the middle eventually, or where we would like to get to, is kind of like a virtual city, and not necessarily a city like GTA where you can like go everywhere in that city, but where we have basically every environment that you can imagine, whether it be a 5-story building, 100-story building, a little 2-story house or 1-story house, manufacturing facilities, wildlands, etc. And you have this full city where there could be emergencies going on that you have your industrial workers able to respond to. But if they're able to like set up a training day, even remotely with their local fire department, then they could jump in and they could take on the roles that they would take on if that happened. Then hopefully in the future, we have paramedicine, we have police, we have all these different areas that could be in this city, either training by themselves or training together remotely or in the same area.
That's so cool, like an interconnected safety training world, like this kind of virtual simulation for all of it. Yeah, so right now it's like fragmented into each piece, but as compute gets better and some of the things you're experimenting with AI, for example, if you can lighten the compute needed to have multiple things happening at the same time or different scenarios in the same space, you can like layer on another level of immersion or collaboration with it. It's
Exactly.
pretty exciting.
Yeah.
Um, it's interesting. I have some other questions, but I'm gonna hold back some of it because I think we're kind of at a natural ending point here where we're kind of getting to a good spot. What is anything you want to plug of something specific you're working on right now, or a place where people can find you to learn more about XpertVR?
Yeah, like finding me, I'm on LinkedIn and respond to every message I get every day. So yeah, definitely reach out there, connect with me there, and also just follow any posts that I'm putting out if you want to see what's coming next and what we're up to. I think beyond that, like I threw out quite a few different ideas, and like some of them we're barreling towards. We have funding we're working on. Other ones we're like, "Hey, we'd love to do this idea, but we need to find the right partners. We need to find the right funding. Like we're basically a bootstrap company. We've taken on just a little bit of investment. So we're always looking for partners like the Ontario government that we can work with to build out these grander ideas and share in the glory of them. So with that, if there's anybody listening that's like, yeah, I would love to build out that type of simulation, or I have an idea for fire safety or safety in general, yeah, reach out and would love to just chat about the idea and see how we could work on that together and collaborate.
Amazing. I'll put some links to Evan's LinkedIn and the website and everything down in the description, so it's super easy to find. But otherwise, that's the pod.
I'm MetaRick.